Have you ever looked at the life you built, career, routines, even your coping habits, and thought, this isn't me anymore? So who am I now? If that hits, you're not alone. I've done that identity pivot myself. I left teaching, rebuilt my life and work, and I'm here to share what actually helped me so that you can find your own way back to you. Welcome back to Becoming Unbound. I'm Carly Butler, and through this podcast, I help freedom minded humans shed old labels, calm their nervous system, and design a life that feels like them. Today, I'm joined by my friend Eddy Tony, entrepreneur, breathwork guide, and soon to be author of The Way In Is Through. Eddy's path has been a powerful blend of curiosity, contrast, and transformation. After a decade as a restaurateur and a nightclub owner, a major health and life crisis became his turning point. That experience led him into the world of wellness, breathwork, and spiritual healing, where he now helps others release stress, reconnect to their bodies, and rediscover inner balance through his private urban retreat here in Toronto. In this conversation, we explore identity after success, what happens when you build your life that looks full but your soul feels stuck, and how practices like breathwork, ecstatic dance, and stillness can help you come home to yourself again. My friends, you're going to want to stay till the end because you'll walk away with the one simple check-in to hear your real inner voice, a gentle micro step that you can take today to get unstuck, and a grounded definition of freedom that gives you permission to rest without guilt and still move your life forward. My friends, I'm so excited for this conversation with Eddy Tony. Let's dive in. All right, Eddy, welcome to the podcast, Becoming Unbound. I can't wait to hear your story. How's it going?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Carly.
Yeah, amazing. I am wanting to just jump right in today. So let's give the listeners maybe a little bit of insight as to how we know each other, and then we can dive right into your story of how you became unbound and what you're how you're navigating your unbound life now.
The first time we connected was up north. It was for an othership retreat for the facilitators and some of the breathwork guides who were on the app. And this was even before othership was even launched. So we
Yeah.
were doing the photo shoot. We were recording content. I was a part of the opening marketing team, and a lot of my breathwork tracks and guidance is on the app as well. And then you and a friend were cooking all the healthy, delicious meals all weekend. That's the first time we connected. And then I feel like we just woven in and out throughout the years. You've come to some of my events that I host in my space here in Toronto at Ananda, other conscious events. And here we are today. And
Yeah. And so for those of you who don't know, Othership is this amazing and it stemmed from the Toronto first location. It's a ice bath sauna spa experience. That's the way I know how to describe it. And then they also have an amazing breathwork app. So I'm just going to just a big plug for Othership right now, but their content is amazing. Their app is something that I literally use every single day, and some of your tracks are definitely favorited in there. And honestly, breathwork is for me one of those tools that really does help, even in those little micro moments of feeling bound up or stuck. Like, what a cool thing to have like an app on your phone that you can do breath work. I mean, I highly suggest going to one of your actual sessions in person, but having a breathwork app is, well, that was revolutionary. So I was so happy that I got to meet you in kind of the birth of that creation through Othership. So cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, how you got to the life that you're living now? How would you tell us that in 5 minutes? It's a big
hmm,
ask, I know.
Initial plug, if you want to know the full story in detail, my book, The Way In Is Through, is coming out late fall, early winter, and I dive into all the stories and the pockets of how I got to where I am today. But Cole's notes for today, I used to own a restaurant, a Thai restaurant. I grew up in that industry. Multiple aunts owned restaurants, and I was doing every part of service from the waiter to line cook to busboy to a bit of management. And I took all those skills and decided to open my own restaurant. That became quite successful. Used the earnings and the profits to open a nightclub, purchased a building, and then I opened a gym. And then all that came crumbling after my brother passed. For good reason as well, because I was digging myself into a hole I felt like I couldn't get out of. I felt like I was getting suffocated by work, wasn't taking care of myself mentally, emotionally. Physically, I was doing my absolute best. I had a personal trainer, tried to eat healthy. However, it was the mental stress and the emotional weight that really got to me that affected my health. And the only outlet I had and that I knew was to party and to go out. And I was consuming a lot of recreational drugs and alcohol, and it served a great purpose because it was a great outlet. It was a lot of fun. I didn't have any regrets. However, when you compile the stress of work, late nights with the nightclub industry, and then you combine it with drugs and alcohol, lack of sleep, lack of self care, it does add up. And there was one early morning in Toronto. I was coming out of an after hours club, lost my keys, lost my coat. I was outside in the cold, stark winter. I had to call CAA to get back into my vehicle. And on that drive home, my entire life started to shift because I started to see myself going down this hole. And if I hit, actually, you know what? That was my rock bottom. I hit the rock bottom, and it was finally time to climb through it. So when I arrived home, that's when I started to make the big shifts. And it was not easy because it was an entire lifestyle transformation. And that meant selling off my businesses one at a time. And that's when I started to enroll into different courses to support my well being, knowing that eventually I would support others as well. Because even from a young age, going into my teens, opening my restaurant, my nightclub, I did it because during those periods of my life, that was what I was most passionate and interested in. And I didn't learn about Ikigai. Ikigai means a vocation that you absolutely love, that pays you, that you feel like you're in flow state. Flow state means like you're so present with what you're doing, things come effortlessly. I was always in my Ikigai. I'm not sure why. However, I always was. I did not love working under people. I tried that. I almost became an electrical apprentice, an electrician working for another company. But it never just felt right. I loved making my own decisions. I'm a very creative person and I like to think outside of the box. And when I feel confined, it doesn't suit my nature. That's why I knew I had to go into entrepreneurship. And the best avenue was restaurant because that's the industry that I grew up in. It gave me that allowance to be creative with designing, with the recipes, with hiring people, and also with just growing and evolution. Because I feel like I've learned the most through my mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes in all of my careers. However, I feel like I need to make those mistakes to feel that polarity and to know how to get out of it. And it's developed me into the person I am today, much more resilient. And there's a deep knowing that any hole I get into, I can climb out, I can get through it. And not only get through it, I'm going to have so much more embodied wisdom as well. So that leads
Oh,
me to where I am today in this field. The the gym was actually like the doorway because the gym is physical. But then once you start to learn about the physical body, you start to realize that there's the emotional component that holds myself and my clients back from making progress, from healthy eating, and from losing weight. And then once you start to get to know more about your emotions, you get to know more about your essence and your spirit and who you are on a soul level. So there's a natural progression moving into the soul from the body, through the mind, through the heart.
wow. Beautiful. That was a beautiful Cole's Notes. I commend you. I can't wait to read your book now, but like, what a beautiful, you just took us on a whole journey. That was amazing. So it sounds like you were kind of unbound, not by birth, but like you knew that in your soul that like being an entrepreneur would be something that you would kind of have to do because you knew that much about yourself. And I think it's really interesting also how you were an entrepreneur and yet you still felt stuck in that. So I think that's a really cool message knowing that like you can be an entrepreneur and still be feeling bound up, stuck by work, stuck by a lifestyle. I can imagine the restaurant lifestyle. I have had a very small glimpse of it through friends, but I can imagine it's not quite working with our circadian rhythms and like the natural seasons of life and our sort of the way the sun comes up. I have a feeling in that lifestyle there's a couple sunrises that you saw. So wow, like to be an entrepreneur and then to still recognize that you were stuck and possibly going down a road of not so many healthy choices even though you were having a blast. All
Yeah,
right.
there's a paradox there because a lot of people, including myself, we go into entrepreneurship because it does allow for a sense of freedom. There's
Mhm.
nobody on top of you telling you what to do, creating your own schedule. However, once you start on this path, you realize that uh, there's no one on top of you telling you what to do, but the business itself, the clients, the staff, the duties, that becomes the cage. And I don't want to say that's necessarily a bad thing because, there's pros and cons to every path. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody because we're all made so differently. Some people actually really do appreciate going into work and following, duties and just doing their job and doing an excellent job. And some people like to lead and to create and be the visionary. And we need all sorts of people in every area. And when I first started, let's say the restaurant, it felt unbound. It felt
Mhm.
infinite, like the world was my oyster. Once I started to get deeper into the business, with more responsibility, that's when I started to feel a bit trapped. And during that period, I knew that I had to step out from execution of the restaurant and start to lead and manage. However, my elders, my aunts, my grandma, my mother, they did not grow up in the industry like that. They were always executing. So there's a deep pressure for me to go into work and labor when I knew that I could grow this business so much more than what it was and have more of that freedom to be creative, to be the visionary, and to create the guidelines and the just the way how the restaurant would run and allow someone to take that over. However, I was bounded to my elders because they were older than me, and in my culture and Asian culture, we just do not argue back to our parents. If we do, there's uh, there's backlash. Even though I own the restaurant 100%, my mom was still my mom.
Mm.
So I had to stay in execution, and that's what really drove me into the ground. Especially when I added the nightclub on top of that. Of course, I did have a lot of support from my brother. He actually purchased in. My sister helped tremendously. My mom, and on the weekends, my dad would come and help. So everybody was very supportive. However, I wasn't able to step out and lead like how I wanted to. So I was really drowning in the execution and the day to day of the restaurant. And today, the restaurant has been passed down to my aunt and uncle, and that's exactly what they're doing. They are now leading. They franchise multiple locations. But I guess to summarize that, anyone who wants to go into entrepreneurship, eventually we have to step outside of the business from execution into leadership, because there will be people who are really passionate about doing the day to day and doing even a better job than us. So if one has a calling to lead, to work on the business outside looking into the business, and that's a true calling, to really follow that. That was one of my downfalls. I would not say regret, because I don't regret anything I did, because actually executing, I developed a lot of grit, a lot of discipline throughout the years, and that stayed with me even until today. So much that I am still executing quite a bit in this new location that I'm in with service, because I do guide psychedelic journeys, breath work. I teach breathwork training as well. And I'm very much a part of that right now. However, this new chapter that I'm stepping into is going to require me to be more of a leader, and then training people to execute and lead under me. And it's not a hierarchy. It's just more so what I feel called to do, and allowing people to do what they do best. And some people love to execute.
That
I do
is,
too. But
yeah.
so it's going to be really challenging not to micromanage. However, I know this is the path that I meant to step into.
Wow, you bring up so many amazing things. And I think it's so important for people to understand that if you are going to become unbound, let's say you are stuck in a 9 to 5 and you're like, hey, I want to do something else. It doesn't always have to mean entrepreneurship, right? Like there are so many wonderful people. And it's like, if you are going to hire someone onto your team, you want them to have entrepreneurial spirit, but maybe they are just best in a team that's already working. They don't maybe want to or have a desire to be in that leading, manifesting, visionary place. And there are just some people who are built for that. And I think that's a really important distinction. And to know that about yourself, I think you could probably do some quizzes or something online, but really get to know what your heart wants in this. Like, do you want to lead or do you want to execute? And maybe it's a combination of both. I think it's really smart that you were able to execute the full vision, because I think you have to go through it. You have to do all of the stuff, everything that's in your business. It's like you have to have at some point taken on one of those roles in order to then step out of the execution role and move into leadership. And that's so smart because you know the ins and outs and every single detail of the business. And it's so beautiful that you're in a new chapter where you kind of get to do that same thing again and really move into that leadership and that visionary place for yourself. How that's, oh, it gives me like goosebumps that you've just figured you've gone through this like personal growth journey. And I think that's what people say about entrepreneurship, that it is a personal growth journey on steroids.
Absolutely. And I did some short courses. My longest schooling was 6 months in
Mm,
restaurant, hotel, casino
mm,
management. But the rest was school of hard knocks. It was me in the business, learning from my mistakes. It was not textbook. So a lot of the wisdom I carry is fully embodied and lived through. And you're absolutely right. Before you step into leadership, you must go through those initiations to know how it really feels like. So then you develop empathy, you develop the wisdom that's embodied to be able to lead from that authentic place. And I love that you mentioned, is there a quiz out there to know what direction to go? There's something that I guide some of my private clients through, is a priorities and a values determination test to see what each individual person values the absolute most in their life. And that's where we begin. Because oftentimes society, elders, friends, they project their values onto you. And sometimes we take that on. For example, my mom's value was execution and
mm,
being in it. That's why she was never an entrepreneur. Her sisters were restaurant owners. She always worked the floor, either as a kitchen chef or a head waitress, because that's what she loved. She did not want the headache, the responsibility, the accounting, the management, the leadership. She just wanted to go in and do her magic and sign out and go home and be peaceful.
Yeah.
So that was her value. My values are a little bit different. I wanted that extra challenge. I wanted to lead. I wanted to be the visionary. So we really got to check in with ourselves to see beyond the noise of what we truly want for ourselves and allow that to be the guiding compass when we are faced with a decision to make.
Yes, getting clear on values is, we've talked about it a lot on this podcast, but it is so crucial to know thyself first, to understand where to start to carve that path, that direction for yourself. Because yeah, you could live a life of like just a full life of execution, but knowing that like there's something in your heart that you're like, I really want to lead and I have a vision for something. And yeah, I think some people are really great for working to work with others. Some great people are really great at working on projects with others. And some people just want to work for themselves and be the one that creates the projects. So I want to go back to that moment and that you discussed when, and I think drugs and alcohol here are a thing when it comes to the stuckness or the boundness. And I don't want to skip over that part because I think so much of our society has become so, we've been able to sort of deal with this stuckness and this boundness and just not knowing ourselves because we have these numbing agents. And I can know from personal experience, people on the podcast, like there are a lot of interesting tools, I'll call them that, tools in our world that we use to kind of like sidestep that awkward feeling or that feeling like that body sensation where you're like, oh, I'm anxious or I don't want to go to work or I know this relationship or this choice that I'm making isn't right. So, how did that play into your life and your stuckness? And maybe how did you get out of that?
First thing, I do want to preface with recreational drugs, with pharmaceutical drugs, alternative
Yeah.
medicines. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. It depends where you are in the polarity of that.
Mm,
For example, sometimes we do need Tylenol. However, if we overdo it, it can definitely wreak havoc on our digestive system. Recreational drugs, when we overdo it, it can wreak havoc on our system. It can become addictive. So I'll share my journey when I first was introduced to recreational drugs, because I did not touch it for the longest time. I was a late bloomer. A lot of my friends were partying in their early 20s, and I was opening restaurants and a nightclub. And for the first few years, it was not partying and it was not drinking. It was building it out and then managing the spaces, managing the team, building the systems, getting everything into place. And it was in the, I believe, second year of my nightclub, my partner and I broke up, and I went into some grieving, some sadness, a little bit of depression. It was quite long. It was 6 to 8 months where I did not feel like myself. So I decided to step back from management and started to become the party. So I started to engage, walk around, talk to the clients. I started to create theme parties. And at this point, because I was not used to being very social, I was very introverted and shy. And that based from some early childhood trauma. I couldn't get myself out of my discomfort of being social. And I was introduced to MDMA at a music festival, and that just opened up my heart. When I say heart opening, I meant that I had this natural inclination to want to speak my love for people, to hug them, to be expressive, to dance. And I surprised myself. I'm like, this is in me. And all it took was a little pill to access it. This is God sent. And I continue that for several years. Of course, the first couple of years, it was more intake. And then, of course, your serotonin receptors start to get fried. You need more. So the effects are to wear off. However, I was able to access a part of myself that I couldn't access without the drug. And there was a turning point where I knew that the effects were dwindling. My emotions were becoming more dull now, and I had to stop. So what I decided to do was remember that feeling of how it was to be on MDMA and to start to pretend to act that way. Literally, I remember,
Wow.
okay, just pretend you're on the drug. Nobody knows. It's all inner work. And I had to really fake it for a long time. And that's a whole entire story.
Yeah.
But that's how I really got myself out of it and started to embody those feelings. And if you want to name it, that's what I would call integration.
Mm.
Yeah, even in a psychedelic journey that I guide right now with psilocybin. So psilocybin takes one into their subconscious to learn more about themselves, their shadows, and the aspects of themselves they've been suppressing, bringing them back to old memories, also accessing inspiration, creativity, uh, a deep sense of that somatic visceral love for themselves, for others. People do experience that in their journeys, but once they come out of it, I really teach people to embody it by practicing what they learned outside of the journey. That's how you really lock it in. And with psilocybin, because there is a neuroplastic quality to it, meaning that it's much easier for us to rewire our brain synapses, our neural pathways. And people do naturally, they feel much lighter and better, clear, more loving post psychedelic journey with psilocybin. But to really anchor it in, they do need to use their conscious awareness um, to do more of it, to like lock it in, even when they don't feel like it, because it's going to build those new neural pathways. And this whole journey with psychedelics that I'm in now, it actually started and stemmed from recreational use of MDMA, of LSD, of mushrooms in those settings. And now I use them much more intentionally in this setting, specifically psilocybin.
Wow, what a beautiful journey, wild journey. And I think, oh, what you said is so powerful is that, like, the fact that we could experience that in our brain, like that high emotion, that bliss state, and all it takes is a little pill. But just to know that that exists is really, really cool. And I think that is almost like, I'm not recommending anything here, but just to like understand that your brain is so much more capable than you think it is, and that we are capable of experiencing these bliss states. Like it is in there. And however you get to that place, because I know for myself, I've experienced both on and off, and it's miraculous that our brain is there, or that we could get into like a softer side, more subconscious version of like the parts of us inside as we like dabble into psilocybin. Like that's really incredible. And I think for me, like, yes, you could use it as a tool to numb. Yes, you could use it as a tool to kind of forget about the stuckness or the horrible job that you just resent going to. But could it be a tool to like understand the bigger, more blissful, more open, heart opening spaces within yourself that could then take you to a place that's less stuck, or like stuck in low vibrational emotions or states. Like, that's incredible that you've been through this and now you use it in such an intentional way. So, is there any other practices? I know the answer to this, but other practices that you use, such as maybe your breath work that has helped you or others find a level of unstuckness?
Besides psychedelics and psychoactives, which can be powerful tools, I love how you use the word tool. And
Mhm.
tools are meant to be used and they can be used in many ways. It's just how you use them, just like a knife. The other tools that I absolutely love, just as potent, if not more at times as well, is breath work, somatic breath work specifically when we go really deep and it becomes very similar to a psychedelic journey, giving similar effects, yielding similar results, and also ecstatic dance.
Mm.
Ecstatic dance was the other tool that I dove into, and I got into that community knowing that I wanted to embody and be able to express myself and move without having to consume medicine and being in an environment where nobody was on MDMA and we were all looking like we were on MDMA. It slowly just gave me permission to let go because everyone else was doing it. Scientifically, that's called emotional contagion, mirror neurons. We're just mirroring each other. And the more I did that in the beginning of my transition into dance without medicine was going to ecstatic dance, to day breaks. I did them all across Thailand, Bali, even in New York. It was an incredible period of my life, which was very liberating to feel that ecstatic bliss just from pure movement and expression. And the key component was giving myself permission. Because when you move in that way and you feel it, you you induce and release serotonin. That's the feel good hormone. The oxytocin. That's like the touch hormone. These are uh, the, the neurochemicals they call it that gets released when we take MDMA. This is all happening when you do ecstatic dance. Also with breath work as well, we can get into those states quite easily. With psilocybin, what happens is your amygdala, this is your fear response, your fight or flight response, softens. So it allows you to touch the deeper parts of yourself, which you have protected. Breathwork does the exact same thing. It lowers the thresholds of the fear response. It calms the default way of thinking, our regular way of thinking, allowing you closer access to some of your wounds, your traumas, things that have not been processed. And all it takes is that awareness just to touch that space. And then there's a natural balancing that happens. And that's done through breath work and is a very specific way. And the key thing with that is to be able to feel safe because upregulated breath work takes you into a stressful state. However, if you are held with care and you know that consciously, and you signal that to the subconscious, and there's space holders, we're able to go deeper into those softer wounds into those wounds to bring some softness into it.
Beautiful. So many amazing tools. And I think it's everyone has to go through that journey, just like entrepreneurship, and you just discover all these things and make mistakes and understand that, like, understanding how these tools can play a role in your life. And I think as we mature and understand them more and understand ourselves, it's this beautiful evolution of how can we use these tools. And I love the place that you're at now where there's this like deep conscious awareness around what tools and things to use to not only help yourself but then to help others. I love what you said, like the softening in of just understanding yourself a little bit more from those places and the walls that we build up where we're like, no, you can't come in here. um and to see that break down a little bit is a beautiful space, and to be somewhere safe where you can feel that. That's really beautiful. So, Eddie, I ask everyone on this podcast, what is your version or definition of freedom? I mean, you thought it was entrepreneurship and working for yourself, and that family kind of your family passed on a whole industry to you. And so now you're into a completely different space. You're in the process, almost finished writing a book. Like, what does this freedom journey look like? And how would you define it right now in your everyday?
Freedom is multiple layers for me. The one that really stands out right now is the ability to be myself, to express myself in how I choose, to be playful, to be grounded, to be creative, to be lazy, to be anything in what I feel in that moment. Because I don't have my parents, like in the past, telling me what to do, telling me how to behave, sometimes I still have those voices
Mhm.
in my head and I do recognize them. The biggest one right now that I grapple with freedom is giving myself permission to rest and be lazy and have a brain fart because it's still ingrained in me from the past that there is no time for that. Because my parents were immigrants, worked very hard, did not waste any time. We didn't come from a wealthy upbringing. However, they did such a great job into bringing the absolute best life they could for us. And I admire their dedication and their grit. And even though now my mom, she's shifted her entire perspective because she is retired. She still works, but she's retired. It keeps her busy. She
Yeah.
loves to do it. She has a lot of energy. But every time I'm on a call with her, she's now telling me, Eddie, you don't have to work so hard anymore. It makes me want to cry. So it's not even her voice today. It's the old voice that was imprinted in me while I was a child, a teenager, that I had to work extra hard, no days off, no rest, full execution. That's still in me because that's when we are sponges. That's when our neural pathways are being developed. So I still grapple with that, giving myself the allowance and the freedom to just be is sometimes challenging, and I do well. However, that's what I'm working towards now. Another layer of freedom is inner peace and having space within my psyche, my mind. When I was in entrepreneurship, running several businesses, I did not have that luxury. There was always something moving in my mind. Couldn't stop it. Nowadays, because I'm a one-person show, I don't have employees, I don't have a lease to pay. It's a much simpler life. I write my book when I want to write my book. I have my client when they're gone. It's complete. The energy's um, closed off and there's a boundary. And I have a lot of inner space and freedom just to think and feel and be creative and enjoy the present moment, enjoy my friends, conversations. I really love the freedom that I have now within myself. There's a part of me that really wants to go back into business because to make a bigger impact, to build a stronger community, and to create jobs and positions for people who might not be able to create for themselves. They need that structure. I have those capabilities, but there is a fear in me that I'm going to lose this inner peace, this mental freedom that I currently have. So that's the inner conflict that I battle with currently. When I say battle, it's not a strong battle, but I think about it quite a bit because I do want to step back into leadership and leading and visionary. I do want to open a business beyond what I'm doing to create bigger impact. So I'm playing with that idea right now. How much freedom do I want to give up? Or maybe it's a whole different perspective that I have not seen yet. Maybe it's not giving up freedom. Maybe it's giving, a position where someone just takes care of that role completely and I have to learn to let go and let be and surrender. So I'm in a self-discovery process right now and it's quite profound. I love where I'm at. Sometimes it comes with a bit of mental stress, but it's good stress. It's chosen stress.
I love that. So many layers to freedom. And yeah, it does seem like that inner peace that you've created, it feels like you've gone through like the heavy work of the entrepreneur in the first couple of years of business. You are now learning what it feels like to give yourself permission slips to be lazy, or it's not even lazy. It's like just pure rest. And then now you've carved out this space for yourself and you're like, but I'm so peaceful. What if I, take on these other things that just, as an entrepreneur, there are going to be more fires. There's going to be things to put out throughout the day. And like, what are you willing to do? And that just takes me back to seasons. Like maybe right now your season is just a little bit of inner peace, and there'll be another season coming up where there will be a little bit more like fuel in there and to ignite that entrepreneurial visionary leader again. And I think that's beautiful that you're just surrendering to knowing that like you are in a self-discovery place.
There's definitely a lot coming. This book
Yeah.
feels like a baby. Once it's birth, it's boss. And I'm going to be the parent and tend to it and give it whatever it needs. That could mean more podcasts, more
Yeah.
interviews. That could mean a book tour. I'm not even sure. But there's a part of me that's preparing myself. And I feel like that's why the rest and the rejuvenation and even for myself, I want to own and see the benefits and the positives in being lazy because sometimes I don't even want to go out. I don't want to talk to my friends. I don't want to work. I just want to do nothing. Just lay on my beautiful couch. I bought an expensive couch and in the past I rarely was able to just lay on it and do nothing and be lazy. And recently, I'm like, you bought this couch for a reason. Go lay and sprawl and be a little bit lazy for a few hours.
It's a beautiful couch. I have sat on it and I would say, yes, Eddie, go after this, go lie down. And if anyone has been in your space, they know that this couch, it's legendary. You can tell you invested in it, and maybe it's time for, I could probably tell you invested in it for the space and the people that you would share that with, but maybe all along it was just a gift for yourself.
Yes, yes, just to use it to its fullest
Yeah.
capacity
Yes.
and to rest.
Lounging. I see that in your future. Amazing, Eddie. Well, this has been quite a journey from start to finish. And I just wondered, is there for someone, or maybe another version of yourself, that is feeling stuck, that is feeling like, oh, they have just gotten themselves in quite a pickle. They're feeling either the heaviness of entrepreneurship, or they are feeling like they're in some pattern or job or relationship that they just don't know where to go to next, but they know something has to change. What's one of those tiny baby steps that they could take towards carving that new path for themselves?
I genuinely feel like each person really knows the answer in that moment for what they need. So my advice would be go take a walk with nothing in your ears and just listen to yourself. What do I really need right now? And right now, not a year, 2, 3 years down the road, like right now. And whatever drops in, trust that voice and just act upon it and see what happens. It could be scary. It could be scary. And there's no right or wrongs because once you take that first step, you're going to gain so much more information about yourself, about that path. And there's nothing wrong with a step back either. That is part of the process. Sometimes we just have to dip our toes just to feel it out. That would be the first step. Second, if you really need some support, guidance, there's lots of people out there, myself included. Not right now, but that's what I do. I coach people. I hold their hand while they're making these big decisions. And I don't guide them with what I want for them. I pull it out of them and I hold them accountable. That's all I do. The answers do not come from me. I just reflect back what my clients are saying and I hold them accountable because we all truly know what we need for ourselves. Anything coming in from the external, take it as an offering. Sometimes it's a projection. Sometimes projections do help as well. But at the end of the day, you really have to trust and believe in yourself. And I want to give a really good example of that
Mhm. Yeah.
that hit me hard. So I recently did a book cover poll. First, I introduced my book cover just to a small group of people who know me very well. And there was one cover that got a lot of high ratings. And then as I opened up to a larger group, there's a second book cover that started to catch up. And then I opened it up to an even bigger group, over 150 people. All the book covers start to line up to even out. So every person is very different, has their own unique perspective, projections, preferences. And as each book climbed the ladder or started to even out, my perception also just shifted and changed based off of the polling as well. And what I learned was if I chose any of these covers, it would be the correct cover because the people who will resonate and respond to it right now, that's who it's meant to serve. 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, that cover may start to resonate with the other half of people who did not respond to it because they start to shift themselves from within to match, not to match a book, to come to the book where it's finally resonating, and that's not under my control. So although I got great feedback from the polling, the big lesson was it didn't even matter which design I chose, whatever feels true to me right now. And what feels true to me right now, that's the correct one. It's going to serve the right people. And then years down the road, it's going to serve the other people who will come across it if it's meant to be. And if it's not my book, it'll be another book, just to really trust. So after the polling closed, I took my top one and then I started to revise it with my designer, and no one has seen it besides my book editor, coach. And I'm going to leave it that way because I don't want to be swayed. So this book cover that will be launched and released, there's going to be a big reveal. No one has seen it. And it's truly what I genuinely wanted to birth in this moment right now.
I love that. What a phenomenal example of how there is no more right path than the path that you are on right now. Like yes, you can make mistakes, but it's like they're not mistakes because you were meant to learn them and that was the right path for you to go down and to make that mistake or to learn from that lesson. And oh gosh, yeah. I think that's so key that like everything that you need to know is already inside, and it's okay if you need someone to hold your hand through that.
Yes,
Yeah. And because, yeah, trusting yourself, we've been taught kind of not to trust ourselves and to outsource everything and to use different tools to numb this or numb that or succumb to the pressures around us. So, trusting that inner voice is hard and it's scary. And it's okay if you need somebody or community or friends or coaches or therapists or healers or energy workers, like whoever it is, hold their hand and they'll be there for you. And it was always inside of you. That's a beautiful message, Eddie.
absolutely right.
Yeah. So the book is coming out fall-ish. Where can people find you in the meantime? Socials, if anyone wants to connect with you and hear more about your story, where can they find you?
My website, www.eddytony.com, EDDYTONY, has all my information. And then my Instagram handle is also Eddy Tony.
Beautiful. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, Eddie. I feel like our listeners just took away and like so much. And I think they're probably going to go hopefully for a little walk right now and tune into what is really going on inside. Amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lovely conversation.
Yeah. So fun. Thank you so much, Eddie. And friends, thanks so much for tuning in. If you liked this episode, if it lit a fire underneath you, or you just feel like someone else might resonate with this conversation, send it over to them, like, subscribe, share it with your community, and hopefully we will help others be more inspired to live a life unbound. All right, friends, we will see you on the next episode.